Howdy of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Power Rangers in Space, episodes 7 through 9. So, I would honestly say that episodes 7 and 8 are kind of just clunker episodes in all brutal honesty. It kind of feels like some people probably needed time off, and so it seems like certain characters are probably very much more focused than others, it seems, or it just seems like they didn't have much of an idea for these episodes. They just kind of went with some kind of like standby things where it's just like, let's just do this story about Cassie going on a date or Andros going with a bunch of thieves in some episode. And but I think kind of episode 9 does kind of give probably us the best episode, I think, out of this season so far. And that's kind of hard to say because reasonably, like, the very first pilot episode of this show is really good. But I think that this episode, episode 9, is just a little bit better. Like, it gives us this Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of episode where all of a sudden we have these things that are coming in called the Craterites that we've kind of seen like here and there consistently throughout certain episodes, certain hologram things, to eventually have these characters finally have their own story and to eventually actually almost take over the town of Angel Grove, which is kind of an interesting, like, probably the best episode I saw since, like, pilot episode of this. I would probably say that this episode, I probably wouldn't say it's the best Power Rangers. Episode 9 would probably be the best Power Rangers episode ever, but it's probably a really good episode that I haven't seen in a while. So freaking check that one out. Check out episode 9. Really interesting episode where it's simply just like the Power Rangers are seemingly consistently outnumbered. There's to be this gigantic threat of thousands upon thousands, these Craterites popping in and almost taking over this town, and that becomes a much more interesting episode just because of this being a numbers gang where the Power Rangers are going to have to uniquely try to figure out what's going on here. And I really enjoyed this episode compared to a lot of others just because a lot of others have this normal formula that it has to go through every single episode, and this one like really not only breaks that formula but is to also give us something like really like on its own. And plus it gives us like, it does kind of give us a flashback to the boy that cried wolf kind of story in episode 9, but it kind of makes up for it being like just a unstopping force of a threat that you rarely see in episodes. So, with that said, let's go into like I almost pretty much said this all in cryptic like sense. So yeah, like episode 9, best episode. Plus it has kind of like the they live kind of thing. Of course, if you guys remember this Roddy Piper film, where eventually he's to mention like I'm here to chew bubblegum and kick butt and I'm all out of bubblegum. Like it kind of also reminds us of that, where like the kid is to be the only one that is to see all of these monsters and no one else can. So eventually, yeah, it just becomes a very interesting story, and I think that's all I can say about this in a very spoiler-like sense. Let's bust it out into much more, or let's go into. I said this in cryptic-like sense. Let's go into spoiler sense for this one. One thing that I should probably mention is one, we have the introduction of the Mega Tank in this show, which why? Like, was that just a gear up for eventually there to be Lightspeed Rescue? Because that feels like a thing that, like, that's why they invented that. Eventually they're like, why don't we just have something like that where it's like a Lightspeed Rescue kind of thing? So maybe they got the idea for Lightspeed Rescue from this kind of thing. I don't know. It was weird. But Also, the one helmets that Bulk and Skull are to wear, I think into not episode 9, but episode 8. I think those helmets are the exact same helmets that they wore when both Bulk and Skull were to be dressed as Power Rangers to make people think that they were Power Rangers in the one episode. I don't remember which one that episode actually is. I don't even know if I even reviewed it, but like I know that is to eventually be coming somewhere down the pipeline when eventually I review every single Power Rangers episode in existence because eventually I'll just need to just be like, okay, I'm just gonna consistently keep doing Power Ranger stuff. Might as well. It seems that like thankfully people watch these. Thank you. I really do appreciate them. That anyone would watch these. Thank you. Uh, if anything, there are still a lot of weapon adaptions that they're doing in these episodes. Spiral sabers and astro blasters and like they in I think right in episode 7 we go into them naming off all of the weapons again just in case anyone forgot. Like we have bizarrely like the Yellow Ranger who has this like sun beam blaster thing, and I'm like, what a goofy name for a weapon. But I guess there's something to involve like space stuff into a bunch of these choices, I would assess or assume. So with that said, let's just go into spoilers. I've talked long enough. Let's just bust these things out because without a doubt, some goofy episodes, but also a really good episode. So, like, we can just take with what we can. So, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this episode. So yeah, I've been using a different app lately to watch all kinds of things. So going to Yes Movies and Shows or Yes Movies, and then go into an app called Yes Movies and Shows. You should probably be able to watch any number of Power Ranger stuff, or you can also go into Fox HD movies app and probably be able to watch a lot of Power Rangers in space stuff or Power Rangers period stuff for free as well, especially because they try to trickle some Netflix stuff out. I recently saw that Power Rangers Beast Morphers was on Netflix, and it was really popular for a whole day, and then that vanished. Well, I think I covered the first 15 episodes, and I was like, oh, maybe I should have like finished the show, but I don't know. Like the whole like relationship rule thing kind of just got me to just be like, okay, this is such a goofy show. Why did they do that? But speaking of relationships, somebody's gonna get technically a date in this episode, so or in one of these episodes. So let's get to it. So spoilers now, spoilers for everybody. So episode 6, we are to have Andros, who is to be technically in the midst of thieves, and he doesn't even realize it. Because in this episode, Andros is not to go to school. Because how exactly would he be able to. Like, nowadays, if Andros was to go into this school, like, there would be no way for him to just easily walk in there. Like, there is so much, like, red tape and all this crap that you have to go into just to get into a school. It's ridiculous. Like I know when like it was towards my senior year, and I came late to like high school days or whatever. I'd have to like sign this paper, and like and the security would have to just be aware that I was like going through this school. I'm like, really? Like you gonna pat me down too and freaking put a metal detector all over my body? Just make sure that like good God, like just coming in late to school one day just mean you had to like be freaking scanned and pickpocketed for your life and just like, oh hey, this is a nice thing of gum. Speaking of gum, so uh so Andros is to have nothing to do, so he just decides, well, hey, I'm gonna go to the surf spot, and all of a sudden we have the main woman who is at this surf spot, and I can't believe that we have surf spot instead of Ernie's milkshake thing, like man, or the community center. Like I think the surf spot is gotta be the most goofiest place to like but I get it. They're going with the Galaxy Glider thing, so like they have to really do this whole like surf spot thing, but I don't get how this is like a trending thing in my life where they're thinking that surfing things are popular. I don't get what that is. But eventually we have all kinds of weird community center spots that these people eventually go into, and some places are worse than others in certain seasons. And eventually I'll probably make fun of every single one of them when eventually you'll see other seasons that I've reviewed at some point in time. So, uh, so the surf spot, freaking just. So Adele, who's to be the main owner of this surf spot, seemingly is to report that her van has gone missing, and so eventually there are to be seemingly these three thieves that Andros is kind of oblivious that they are thieves, and all of a sudden we see this one guy who is trying to unlock this car, and Andros is like, hey, you guys forgot your keys? And the guy is like, yeah, I forgot my keys, like, can you help? So Andros, trying to assume that this guy is doing like something to just unlock his own car, Andros decides to use his own power to unlock this car, and so they all get in. And so the thieves are to tell Andros, hey, why don't you just come with us and like, and you can help us out. Like you can like help us out and we'll show you a tour and everything like that. So the goofy villain that of course is to be upon our midst today, like, because I can't really quite understand, like, it seems like we're having a lot of electricity in this season as far as villains goes. But hey, like, I guess there's like, it's the easy way to have every villain just be like an easy thing to put out as another electrical villain, just because like you don't have to like, it would be cool if there was like a wizard somewhere in our midst or some magician or some kind of like uh God, I miss when like characters would just be like flinging fish at the Power Rangers, like these goofy things that wouldn't make no sense to just slap freaking a Power Ranger with a fish or something. It would be hilarious, but that doesn't happen ever so often. But man, do I just love me like somebody like flinging a fish and like plah, and like they get hit with it and they get friggin' legitimately knocked out, or legitimately just like freaking dropped by this like hefty thing coming at them, which looks freaking hilarious. But like, we don't have those moments. We just have voltage freaking monsters, evidently. Which, no offense, it's the easiest thing. You just have to CGI the voltage part, and easy as pie. You don't even have to really have the monster get hit all that often either. So good for them. So this monster of this episode is to be a thing called Voltage Hog. And I'm just like, man, they must have some problems coming up with monster names, because once you kind of go this one route with thing, like you just really have to just come up with like, what is this monster gonna do? Like, well, it's electricity. It's like, well, we've done that 55 times now. What's gonna be a unique name for this character that probably doesn't actually tie with the monster, but like has to be just a unique name tossed out there? Because I'm sure there's probably a monster name guy. There's probably a monster guy that makes them. There's helmet guy. There's suit guy. There's like probably somebody that designs the boots, probably of every Power Ranger. Who knows? Like there's blaster guy. There's sword weapon guy. There's probably hey, like clothing guy. What are they all gonna wear this week? Well, I just went and I just bought all this thrift store crap for them to just wear this one week, and because it feels obvious that, like, I'm sure nobody and their brother would have actually picked out, like, to wear pigtails in certain episodes or goofy little things to put in their hair. But man, do these people just like, okay, I guess I'll just wear this week. Why? But hey, it's better than overalls, right? Freaking, like, I'm sure David Yost freaking hated overalls. So freaking mad props to David Yost. Years of wearing overalls until eventually he's just like, dude, I'm ditching the glasses, I'm ditching the overalls, I'm gonna say I have contacts, and give me some other freaking clothes. Like, I did a Power Rangers movie. Like, let's ditch the overalls. For the love of God. So, let's get into it. So, Andros eventually is to go on this mission with these thieves, which he is to not recognize that they are legitimately thieves. All of a sudden, it seems that one of the thieves is to have a friend of theirs that is to steal a woman's purse. Andros runs out of the car and is to grab the purse from the thief and give it back to this old lady. Cops are there to cuff this guy, and we weirdly have this, like, this old lady is just hugging Andros and is like, thank you. I'm just like, this feels weird. This hug is going on for far too long. And it feels like this woman is like, yeah. She's like really savoring in this hug because I guess she wants some more camera time, which is perfectly okay. So Andros is giving this old lady her purse, and then he ends up going back into the car and is like, yeah, like, I hate thieves. And then the one guy with the ski cap on, during summer, of course, and what have you. But then again, who am I to say? Because I've worn ski caps, like, year round, because reasonably, it's an easy thing to not have to, like, fix this hair at any point in time. And plus, there's a lot of times where just hair looks all weird and freaking bedhead and whatever, so you just throw on a ski cap. But this guy does it because he has to look like a thief compared to everyone else in the car. So everyone else just looks like rejects of some Power Ranger season where they didn't get casted. So it's like, hey, if you guys ever need anybody, just hire us. If you need any extras or any little side characters, just hire us for the season. But really, like, I think this season was probably easy to cast because all they had to cast was one Power Ranger. Really saved them some time. So, but maybe they didn't know if Andros was going to be male or female, so they just kind of like casted both. I don't know, whichever. So, pushing on. So, eventually, the thieves are to head to this junkyard where eventually Andros is to find that Adele's surf spot truck is getting vandalized by these people, and Andros is like, "Oh, you're thieves? How could you? I thought we were friends." And it's like, no, like, we were just using you. We maybe thought that you could join the dark side, but evidently, Andros, you just, no. Sucks to be you. So, all of a sudden, we have Voltage Hog, who appears at this junkyard because junkyard and electricity makes sense, right? No. But, whatever. So, the Voltage Hog is to eventually go into this junkyard looking to get Feed Me Seymour. So, Voltage Hog comes in, and Andros is like, well, hey, you guys step aside, and I'm just going to start kicking this thing, and I'm just going to start punching this thing, and I'm just going to start, like, just not morphed, just try to just punch up this monster, because we need time to waste on this show. We need, like, X amount of minutes, so let me just, you know, just get some licks in, to really show people that, one, people that aren't morphed can actually punch and kick monsters. It's not always the people have to be morphed to kick butt. So the thieves are to run off because, of course, they're thieves, and they're like, dude, I ain't gonna get any part of that monster. So they run off, and so Andros is to morph. And so Andros morphs to try to fight off Voltage Hog. And speaking of Hog, there's somebody that I think is already spending way too much time hogging the spotlight because Ecliptor all of a sudden comes in. And, like, there's some cool action sequences that we get with both Andros's character and Ecliptor here. Like, there's a spot where Ecliptor is to take the Red Ranger's face and just, like, drill him into this water while he's morphed, and just like, yeah, like that was actually a cool spot because it looks different. Um, but yeah, so all of a sudden, just Voltage Hog just runs off, and then Ecliptor just becomes battling Andros again. I'm like, dude, we've seen this already. Like, we've seen, like, Ecliptor, like, what the buddy? Like, why are you in every one of these scenes? What's up with that? Like, are you just like give me the spotlight, Mr. DeVille. What are you doing here? Like, why are you always in every episode? Like, I get, like, freaking, like, maybe this monster might be cool than the Monster of the Week character, but still, like, because Ecliptor could do a little bit more interesting action moments than this monster might, but still. And plus, also, maybe this monster can't freaking see. I don't see where possible this monster has eye holes to see a lick of anything. So eventually, Ecliptor is to try to take out Andros, but sadly enough, the rest of the Rangers disappear because I guess school is out. They look like they're 30, but school is out. They all look like they're in their late, like, not late, they're like 30s somewhere, maybe older than me. I don't know, maybe they younger than me, because I look old. I'm old. Anyways, pushing on. So, the rest of the Rangers are to appear, and so Ecliptor's like, well, I'm getting out of here. Voltage Hog, take him out. So, Voltage Hog, of course, grows big, and so now they have to get the Astro Mega ship to eventually become Astro Megazord to eventually have a good time. We also get a spot where they are to use this new adaptional weapon, which is the Quadra Blaster, or the goofy, weird blaster of a thing that I don't have the exact name of here, which is kind of sad. Oh crap. Whoops. Yeah, somebody used the wrong thing to get the wrong information. Whoops. Hopefully I don't need to know any... Here's the problem. I accidentally... I have all the information of all the information, but it's in a different place than where I put these photos of this stuff. So I'm not going to take the time to switch over. So the Quadra Blaster, or the weird, goofy, like, they mix all the weapons together and then do this big blast of a thing. And, also in this episode, beginning of the episode, they end up doing this, like, hologram battle with some monster, which I wish they could have made you think that it wasn't the hologram thing, that was actually some battle, and then all of a sudden they would have said, like, well, end simulation, and then that would have been a cool way to intro, like, to just be like, wait a minute, what, did we miss a clip? What's going on here? And then all of a sudden, hologram would be like, oh, okay. Like, I think that they should have done that, because if you're going to have a thing like a hologramic thing like that, like, surprise people. Like, let me pause here for a second. Well, all right. Now, I have it in the right place anyways. So, what was the blaster called? It, of course, was called the Quadro Blaster. And of course, by that time, all right. I had to text somebody something. I was sending a tweet. Yeah, Quadra Blaster. So I'm like, okay. So now, whoops. because now all the pictures are in the right place, or all the spots are in the right place. A little behind the scenes, yeah, like there are a lot of times where I take a picture of like a screenshot the actual monster of the episode. So usually the monster of the episode reminds me what the episode was, because a lot of times I forget. But like the monster of the week will be like, oh yeah, it's that episode. Like, because I've kind of tried to figure out a better way to remember every episode, because it's really people will say that it's simple, but like a lot of the episodes after Power Rangers time have all blended together, and so a lot of episodes seem familiar a lot, because they kind of haven't changed in the number of decades that they've done a thing. So so let's go into it. So they use the Quadra Blaster, and that doesn't kill the monster. Eventually, they decide to make the monster, of course, larger, make my monster grow moment. So the voltage hog grows big, and so they, of course, Megazord it up. And so what they end up doing is they end up using this sword, but they don't like swipe it like normal, like they've done a bajillion times. Like this time around, I think they use the blade and then just kind of use it as a thing to like be like tossed into the monster, and then bizarrely like the blade just like takes the monster down weirdly. Like I think they only use that once. So the next episode for Power Rangers, because at the tail end of this episode, of the other episode, they talk about plutonium. And so this episode, we have the professor, who is to talk so much about plutonium and sending Bulk and Skull out into outer space with just plutonium with them, I guess, because how exactly are they going into outer space? Was that just some idea that wasn't really thought through? I don't know how plutonium gets Bulk and Skull up into space, but whatever, I guess it really doesn't matter, because it doesn't actually happen regardless. So, but again, this is the premiere of the Mega Tank thing. So the Power Rangers are to have like images on one of their TV screens about the Mega Tank. And so Andros is like, yeah, like we need this Mega Tank for certain like situations if we're ever in other planets that are to eventually have rough terrain. Like, why not just get a vehicle? Why did you have to invent one? You could have just got like a motocross. You could have just got like like you could have just got like a Jeep or something. You could have like, why did you have to expensively make a whole thing? But whatever. Like, I don't even think most of the time like the Mega Tank thing isn't really used to its best. Like, you could have had Power Rangers just run through that building. I don't get whatever. So, really, this whole episode is to be catered around this professor who has this, who has the, what is the word here? Plutonium. There we go. That's the magical word of today. Plutonium, kids. The word of today. So, this plutonium is to be on top of this very high skyscraper, because evidently the professor just owns a building now for whatever reason. And so all of a sudden that has the villain, who is to be Astronema, having like every single episode, she has to have some kind of weird color of hair. Like one episode's purple, one episode it's black, one episode it's like white, tan, pink, something. You would think that this woman's hair after this show is over would be dead. Like, probably like mine will be at some point in the years to come. But man, like, I feel bad for the woman that is Andromeda and she has like all different hair. But maybe that was cool for her. I don't know. Maybe she just liked that kind of thing. Or maybe she was like, oh man, I can't wait till eventually I come back, be a Power Ranger, and my hair is in 20 bajillion different colors. Because eventually she comes back and is actually a Power Ranger for a season, which I actually enjoyed that because it was a different thing. But big ups to Andromeda eventually becoming a Power Ranger. Man, would that be freaking great? Because a lot of times, like, things don't work out all that great, and like Power Rangers can't come back, and or villains or whichever can't come back and eventually be Power Rangers, with the exclusion of some people come back as who were villains and would come back to mentor certain people in certain seasons, aka Power Ranger Samurai, but like they wouldn't eventually become Power Rangers. So sadly enough, but a lot of people wouldn't eventually become Power Rangers, aka Bulk and Skull. So, but eventually there is this thing that it exists called Hyperforce. So Bulk eventually did get one. Skull not so much. But eventually I'll eventually learn their actual names. I know Bulk's actual name is Paul, but again, I don't have IMDb at my thrustrial thing because I technically know the Power Rangers names by now, and I know most of the players, but eventually I'll get something wrong. It's bound to happen because I'll do it every day. Get something wrong. So, anyways, sorry about that waste of time there. Let's go into the Elephant Titan. Or Elephant Titan? So, they made a monster that is to just ram into a building for an entire episode. Okay, Oakley Dokley. But not only that, do we also have Cassie, who has a diary in this episode, which I'm just like, oh my god, this is gonna be the worst maybe story that I have heard. So Cassie is to lose her diary and leave it at the surf spot, and Cassie is to have put photos into her diary, and Cassie is to mention to Ashley that maybe there is a picture of her as a Power Ranger in one of the photos. And so now they have to desperately try to find where this diary is, just for eventually them to have somebody taken her diary to blackmail her for a date. I think the guy who was to get the date, I believe his name was Ned. And I believe the blonde-haired guy that was honestly just annoying, but hey man, freaking get your lines out. Like, have 12 billion other lines so you can just say, hey man, in a Power Ranger show, I had freaking 12 lines. Good for me, because even some Power Rangers don't get that many lines in any show, because a lot of times they're just the person that's just there. So, like, be lucky if you can be on a Power Ranger show and get one word in edgewise, because a lot of times you'll just be the person that doesn't talk for seemingly a bulk of an episode, like I think Ned was, who Cassie was to date in this episode. So, this massive man who cannot talk is to blackmail Cassie for this date, and Cassie's just like, well, okay, I guess I could do worse, but I don't really want anything to do with George here because he's annoying. So eventually Cassie and her date of the day is to eventually run off and leave George hanging because she tries to figure out a way to get rid of him. And so they run off, and George is to mention that this guy is to supposedly stumble or fumble upon his words, but when Cassie is to be with this guy, it seems like he talks perfectly fine, weirdly enough. So eventually Cassie is to tell this guy, hey, like, Let's have a legitimate date, and then after it all, you can give me the diary, but we'll have fun. And so the guy's like, sounds great. Sounds like a deal. So, because at the end of this, like, Cassie tells this guy, it's like, well, you didn't really have to blackmail me to get me to date you. And, like, wouldn't any guy just be like, but you're a Power Ranger? How was I ever going to get a slice of that when really I'm just the schlub? Like, who the am I to eventually be with the mist of Power Ranger? As if I know you're Power Ranger. What is this? What am I doing with my head? I don't know. It's fun. So, so Cassie goes on a legit date, which bizarrely leads them to have both Cassie and boyfriend to go into building, coincidentally, that has the plutonium. I wonder why. Why would they do this? Story tells you so. No, because eventually Cassie is to eventually be mixed with building that is falling over, creating now Cassie to want to go near and dear the plutonium to eventually go and be tempted to morph, while guys be like, help, get us out of here, wherever we are. I don't know where we are. So Cassie is tempted to morph, but we have Andros with the mega tank that is just making their way into the building. In a movie, while I was also looking at this mega tank thing, I kept thinking of the Bill Murray movie Stripes, where at the end you have this weird looking like RV of a thing that is trying to make it through this place to rescue a bunch of his friends and then get the heck out of there. That's bizarrely what this situation reminded me of, weirdly. I don't know why, but it just did. Things pop in there. So Andros is using the mega tank to get up these stairs, and he's just like, man, this is some real rough terrain. We're really testing this bad boy out. So Andros is to bizarrely be able to see that it seems like Cassie is tempted to morph, and so Andros luckily crashes through the wall just in the nick of time before Cassie deliciously morphs and is to tell her secret to a guy that she might have to marry after this, because to keep the secret up, because he's already blackmailed her for like just a date. What is going to happen after like the whole like secret is revealed thing? Like, this guy's like, I want marriage, I want I want at least 2 full years of that good old marriage, and then we could just call it a day. No, that would be awful. And plus also that would be a loveless marriage or whichever. So but anyways, pushing on. So it seems that the Power Rangers all are to rescue both Cassie and I believe his name is Ned. I could be wrong. And I'm sure I am. Believe me, I probably am. And so, weirdly enough, Ned, I guess, is to pass out in the mega tank. And so that just easily leads to Cassie being able to morph. And again, I still have this problem in every single Power Ranger show where people just morph in public. Like, hey guys, the secret is never to be revealed that I'm a Power Ranger, but I'm always in a public place morphing. This never needs to be secret. There's never going to be like a Power Rangers phone booth that I'm going to go into, morph in secret, and then come out and no one will know that I'm Power, because magical phone booth. Anyways, like, that'll never happen. Maybe if somebody invents it, then like, but you might as well just come out with it. You might as well just be Iron Man Tony Stark through every single one of these seasons. Why is there a secret of who the Power Rangers are? You might as well nip the whole secret thing in the butt, because really, don't be a secret with it, because really, I don't know how many times somebody's morphed in public and someone could have just been like, guess what secret I have? I'm a bajillionaire. Look at me. But whatever. I'm sorry about the long lead up of this. I apologize. but it's me being fun. So they morph, and so we eventually have, of course, the Elephant Titan who is to morph also. And because we had the Mega Tank who bizarrely had to like pull the plutonium out of the chamber of which that it was being held in. And I guess that kind of stopped the thing from getting overheated because I guess they neutralized it. So, there's a lot of goofy things that Bulk and Skull do in these episodes too. Where, like, at one episode, they think that a bunny is an alien, and so they're in these trash cans, and they're just trying to trap the bunny. Why, I just don't know, but it's funny. Bizarre, but funny. So, pushing on. So, again, we have to, as per usual, go and do some, like, blaster thing to try to take these things down, because the gimmick is always the blaster thing. But eventually they Megazord up. Eventually they go and wipe this monster off the planet, as per usual. But eventually I think the building does fall over, but the plutonium doesn't, like, explode and destroy this whole world. But eventually Bulk and Skull and the professor are seemingly in the midst of rubble, but, like, everything is to eventually seem fine. So yeah, like, that's their goofy thing that they end up doing for this other episode. So now, let's get to the frickin' good episode, I feel. And a lot of people will be like, well, my favorite is not this episode, it's another thing, and that's okay. Because they've been building up this hologram thing for I don't know how many episodes now. Maybe 9, maybe less, who knows? I don't. So, they've been building up this hologram thing, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Why is it that we have hologram things, but there's no origins to these hologram things? Like, where is the craterite things that's been used somewhere before, and now we have this answer? So, and I think there was one point where they used the hologram in one episode where I think they ended up reusing footage. I think they did. Because I think there was a spot where TJ and Ashley were going into the hologram thing to go and do some practice, and they end up doing this, like, spinning move, and I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't that thing used in another episode where you just kind of see both TJ and Ashley flying through the air? And did they reuse that footage, or is that just me? Like, was there some goofy thing that they tried to, I don't know, that just seemed weird. It just seemed a lot of weird going on right there. So, all of a sudden, Ashley and TJ are going and doing some hologramish thing, which all of a sudden it seems like there is some goofy computer failure, where all of a sudden the Craterites who were in the simulation are to all of a sudden be thrusted out of this simulation to eventually try to escape out of this ship, which all of a sudden you just see all these, like, Craterites just being parachuting out of this ship, and there's supposedly thousands upon thousands upon thousands of them to just rule over the world, just murder everyone. Well, not murder. It's basically they end up just like rope and gagging them. That's all they do. They don't consume them. They don't body snatcher them, where all of a sudden you just see a husk of what a person used to be. Doesn't happen. But we also get a kid who is to tell wild and unusual stories. So Cassie and Carlos are to be with these kids, and this one kid is to mention that there was this 20-foot bear. I'm like, so we're thinking, like, Incredible Hulk size bear? Like, which, like, I guess that could be roughly about a size of a normal Power Rangers monster, maybe? So, this kid is to mention that there was this bear who took a bite out of his arm, But then all of a sudden the mother comes in and is like, you kid, you telling all kinds of stories, because eventually she wipes his arm and finds that like the scar that he had from the bite is just fake. And so the kids are just like, oh, he's telling tall tales. Ha 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 ha. What a goober. So the kids all are to walk off. And so all of a sudden the kid is to go home, and there's a police officer nearby. And so the kid is just like, hey, officer, I just saw a bunch of people robbing a bank. Go over there and just catch them. And the cop is just like, ah, kid, you rascal, you. Like, I'm sure there's nothing like that happening, because I would have gotten a call. And plus, also, like, have you ever seen a nightstick, kid? Have you ever seen a gun? Have you ever seen cuffs, kid? Have you ever seen mace? A billion of my other accessories? Have you seen them? Have you? Are you going to tell tall tales now, kid? Anyways, pushing on. So, eventually we have this kid who the very next day is to be going to school. And so, his mother is to tell him, hey, like, one of our friends is going to go and take you off to school, so get ready. This kid has no backpack, and like all he has is just his clothes on him, which maybe he's poor, because I can understand that. Like, hey, there's some people that just come to school and they're like, I got nothing. And so there's a lot of times where like some people will just be like, hey man, like here's a pen, here's a pencil, just do something, man. Just like try your best. Like if you need a calculator, I'll borrow, like you can borrow mine. But then there's also some people that bizarrely every single class they just miss pens. Like, I don't know why there was this one girl that, like, I think took, like, 10 pens from me one freaking, like, time when I was at school. This girl kept asking for a pen, and I was like, don't you have pens? Where, like, I borrowed you, like, a pen yesterday. Now I have to borrow you another pen today? Like, this is, like, the 10th pen. It just got to the point where I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to borrow anything from you. Or I'm not going to give anything to you, because you just keep, like, misplacing things weirdly. Like, this girl was attractive, but, like, there's at one point where it's just like, your looks ain't going to just give me the ability to lose all of my pens and all my because you're just, I don't know where all my stuff is. I bet you're just, like, one of those people that just continue to take from people and then have like 85 pens and pencils all in your house somewhere. Probably. I don't want to stereotype anybody, but still, the more you know. So, going into this, eventually this kid is go out, because eventually his neighbor who is to drive him to school all of a sudden is an alien. So, the kid is to just be running out and is to eventually just go like, hey, police officer that I said some crap to before. Like, hey, man, aliens are everywhere. And all of a sudden we find out that the police officer is actually an alien himself. And so the kid just runs off and goes to his friends. And, like, his friends, like, don't believe him. And so he's just like, well, I guess I'm just going to go freaking and not go to school. Because F all of these people. Like, I'm just going to sit on some bench and just cry because all aliens are out there. Like, also, this kid was weirdly, like, up sometime late at night, seeing everybody just kind of rustle around this entire town weirdly. So, like, obviously some, Invasion of the Body Snatcher stuff. Well, I was trying to think of that. So, coincidentally, Carlos and Cassie are to see this kid because they're eventually trying to look for these craterites anyways. And so they're trying to find where the heck these craterites are, but they can't find them anywhere because the craterites have turned into human form, so they can't understand who's human and who's not, so they're confused. So, eventually, Carlos and Cassie go and take this kid back to his home, and this kid is just like, oh, I don't know where to turn. Oh, everybody's aliens. So Cassie is to tell this kid, it's like, well, you have told a lot of big tales, so I'm not going to believe you, kid. So, and then eventually Carlos is to mention the Power Rangers, and the kid is just like, now you're telling some tall tales. So the kid goes back in, and so eventually we find out that this place is just cluttered with these craterites, and eventually Andros, TJ, and Ashley are making their way to this construction site, where eventually they end up finding some humans in this van, which is to lead to these other humans being the same as these other people, so they're craterites. So weirdly, we have a message that is to have supposedly been sent to both Carlos and Cassie, which there was no message. It was just them getting their part cut off, and all of a sudden we just go back to Andros and Ashley and TJ going and fighting these craterites, and then all of a sudden Cassie and Carlos just show up. I'm just like, what a goofy trend. Like, it feels like they might have cut things for time or something, or like there was some goofy spots in this show somewhere where there was like this spot where this monster just like stopped for like a couple seconds. It's like, what the heck is this in these episodes? There were some weird things going on. There might have been something left in the drawing room floor, or maybe they just had to kill things for time. I don't know. Maybe they did things and then had to cut things for time. It must have been. So, going in here, now we have all the Rangers trying to fight out these craterites, but eventually that just leads... There's so many craterites around this area that they go and they take this kid and they scramble him to go and find, luckily, where his mother is, because his mother is driving off in her vehicle. So, like, hey, Ma, take your kid and friggin' get the heck out of here, because craterites are everywhere. They're all over the place. So, all of a sudden, the Power Rangers are trying to take out these craterites, but of course, they're getting severely outnumbered, because these things are all over the goddamn place. So, that all of a sudden, the craterites just decide, well, we're going to make ourselves grow. But how they do this is really just cool, because they take all of their numbers all together and make one big, massive thing of themselves, which I'm like, God, that's so cool. And also, when they, of course, switch into Megazord mode and try to take this thing out, and they try to, like, slice through it, all of a sudden, the craterites just compile together, and like whatever damage they did was a waste. I was like, ha 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 ha, unbeatable freaking monster. Like, it reminds me of Eye Guy, where like you take him down and the eyes just regroup together and remake the monster. I love those kinds of things where the monster seems to be hard to beat. It's not you're going to sword him away or hit him with some blaster and the thing will be dead and easy as pie as usual. I love when a Megazord has to really struggle and like stuff falls off of the Megazord at some points. Like, that's how severe this battle is, that they really have to go and just really adapt in some point, with, instead of having to sort away everything, just slice and dice and kill everything always. Because I just want them to always do something different. Frickin' like have a Captain America shield that like frickin' gets flung out and frickin' just like sword, like blades, like shields through somebody's body, which you don't actually see, and then you could just be like, oh, okay, that's how the thing dies. Like, I would love there to just be some kind of chopping mechanism that just takes out a leg or an arm. There's not blood being put out, but at least, like, you get that kind of thing. So, But anyways, we use this blaster bizarrely in this episode that is to take out the Craterites. But again, best episode I think of this season. I'm not quite sure if best episode ever, but like monster wise, probably has to be the best episode ever. From what I can like say, there might be some story arcing things that I might have enjoyed in certain things. Like Power Rangers Samurai had really good story. Uh, like considering out of all the other seasons that eventually like there was a lot of things where I was just like, about. I had problems with, and I just kind of was like, nah. Like, especially once we got to the later seasons. A lot of the later seasons was just like, God, why did we do this? Why is this a thing in our lives? And I complain about it. But, good freaking episode. My favorite out of this season so far because it reminded me of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But also, like, the kid learned his lesson at the end to eventually not boy who cried wolf. And so eventually once the police officer shows up, like the boy's like, hey, like officer, I've learned my lesson. And the police officer's like, good. Because, like, I'm going to arrest you and here's my nightstick. So, I hope that doesn't, like, I hope there isn't something that, like, goofily, I just wanted to, like, be, like, make fun or whatever. Anyways. So, the very end of this, we have Bulk and Skull, who bizarrely have this one hearing device thing that is to be attached to the vehicle. And so, weirdly, Bulk and Skull are to have this device that is to be this stripper that is to supposedly strip an alien of its fake identity to reveal that it's an actual alien. So Bulk and Skull go ahead and blast this thing to eventually just blast themselves. And I'm like, woohoo! Like Bulk and Skull just just working it out. In their tank top and boxers, I think. But yeah, so like Adele is to mention it's like, well, I guess there's a whole reason why they call it a stripper. Like we really go into like the real like un-PG of it all, but it's good for comedy. So yeah, Bulk and Skull run off. Like weirdly, like in this episode, like they had this weird device of a thing, but I really didn't understand what they were doing, Bulk and Skull and the professor in this episode. It just, like, what was the, I just, but anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, right. Oops.